listening to MIP Talk, conversations with the world's most interesting people.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to MIP Talk, conversations with the world's most interesting people. This is your host, Brad Rowe. I am with Batse Poeshongwe. I think I did pretty well enunciating that. And that is probably the best it's been done today. I have had the opportunity to meet her and want to talk about the wonderful work that she is doing. We were introduced, once again, Terry Babcock-Loomish, making connections here at the Clinton Global Initiative. Batse, can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing here? Why is this important to your organization? And who are some of these people that you've had a chance to watch? I was in that same session that you were at with Lance Armstrong and Mr. Gupta. You guys have met?
We've met. We did an interview together last year in Dublin for Live Strong. And yeah, we got to hang. And
he didn't get your name right.
No, he didn't. We did a follow-up interview with his crew in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I had to write and teach him how to pronounce it, but he still got it wrong.
Well, that's all right. He's very good at a million things, so we'll let that one slide. So what is your affiliation with Live Strong, and how did you get to be there? I know that you are started as an upstart yourself and have now sort of are partnering up with some other organizations as well.
No, I'm still on my own. I'm still an upstart, but I was invited to participate with Live Strong last year because they're very interested in stigma work. And my main focus is doing stigma work in South Africa around breast cancer, because when I was in treatment, I'm a survivor myself. So when I was in treatment, I realized that there were no black women who were prepared to come to, the public domain and speak about their breastlessness. And I realized that it was because of cultural impediments and the stigma around breast loss. And most important, the position of women in society, because we still have a situation of male patriarchy, even though we live in Johannesburg, South Africa.
What are some of the implications of stigma? How does that sort of affect the real life experience for women in South Africa?
Breast cancer stigma, breast loss stigma would destroy a woman's chances of getting married, for instance. There are cultural belief systems like you're a witch, that's why you lost your breast, you're being punished by the ancestors, the wrath of the ancestors for something you did. You don't believe in God strongly enough that God is testing your faith. So, but on a more serious note, it's just that ability to get married that most women need because of the low resources that women have.
So even if you did realize that you perhaps had an issue, you found a lump or something like that, you would maybe not even bring it to anyone's attention because you wouldn't want to ruin your opportunities for marriage and for other things in life.
Sadly, we don't have enough knowledge about cancer within black communities because it's still perceived as a white person's disease. So whereas where I went for medical treatment, and for a woman in my position, I would have found my lump and gone and sought treatment. But the average woman in a black neighborhood will sit until she's stages 3 or 4. And I mean, I don't want to gross out your audience, but I had never seen rotten breasts, just septic breasts. And you say, to a woman, when did this start? And she'll say, last week. But it's, because women don't know what they're dealing with. And if the things start going septic, they're more inclined to go to a traditional healer or a church to be cleansed than to come for Western medical treatment. So it's those kind of issues that you have to teach. And when women finally come into the system and they're being advised by Western medical practitioners to have a mastectomy, and then you have to teach them the value of having that kind of surgery without going to husband first to seek permission, or to thinking, if I am not married and I'm 25, because the incidence is growing, unfortunately, amongst younger women, I'm 25, that's going to destroy my chances of getting married. You have to help women to stop doing their value, measuring their value as human beings on the basis of marriage or their association with a man.
Right. It's a really good point. It makes me wonder Are there statistics that sort of back up people who are in existing marriages and go through this type of process? Does that make people no longer worthy of staying in the marriage, or is there stigma to that level as well?
In terms of statistic and divorce rates, we don't keep those kind of statistics. I mean, South Africa is a crazy situation in terms of our health care system. Cancer is not something that even our national health system takes seriously. So we don't have a national cancer registry. So we wouldn't be able to know how many women are getting divorced because of their cancer when we don't even know how many people are impacted by cancer, because our numbers in terms of cancer mortality for cancer control are based on the number of deaths. So, the people who are coming into the system are probably just the tip of the iceberg.
So one of the statistics that really jumped out at me when I was watching the session earlier was that within the next, say, 10, 15 years, that over 3/4 of the cases of cancer will happen in the developing world, and contrast that with another statistic, which was, I believe it said 5% of the money that's allocated towards cancer research is dedicated towards the developing world. So is that the gap you're trying to bring attention to and to close?
Absolutely. It's very challenging coming from a resource-scarce country to get the attention and the resources to deal with cancer. Unfortunately, there's no government will in terms of, even with my work, getting just national government to put their name behind my project. So we need the first world to start, reallocating or trying to distribute evenly the amount of resources that are available for cancer control. I mean, drugs being very expensive in the third world, even though some of the research is done in the third world, and then you have a drug that's developed, comes to the West, and then sold to the West, to the third world at 2-3 times the cost of the drug in the first world. So, those kind of distributions have to be realigned, and people have to realize just how big a population the developing world has.
So the model that's been effective in abating or reducing the amounts of HIV/AIDS in some countries is the reverse of what you're talking about, which is where the R&D money is spent in the Western world, where the people are spending quite a lot of money to receive the treatments, but a lot of the pharmaceutical companies have agreed to or are making the product to a lot cheaper in different countries. Why hasn't that taken place in the world of cancer?
Because of this perverse comparison of diseases. There is this notion, great work has been done vis-a-vis controlling HIV/AIDS. But if you come to a funder and you say cancer is a growing global issue, people would still say the funds that we have are allocated to AIDS, and we're going to be funding AIDS for the next 10 years. Cancer is not an issue. And I think people need to understand that the incidence of cancer is growing in a freaky way, and that unless we start addressing cancer now, we're going to have problems. And I don't understand why people cannot have programs that are interlinked. For instance, because the incidence of HIV/AIDS is so high in Southern Africa, I think it's about 58% of the world's AIDS population. I don't see why we should not be combining cancer treatment with HIV/AIDS treatment and have a cluster, for instance, that deals with women's health. Why we still need to have this competition where resources are being made scarce, because there is this I guess I'm biased, I'm in the cancer world, and as a survivor, this is even more personal for me and very painful when I go to the hospital where I work and see the great suffering that's there because of a lack of resources. And then I have to go to people who then tell me, no, cancer is not an issue.
Batsy, bring our listeners back a little bit to your own personal journey. What was the process by which you were diagnosed or self-diagnosed the cancer, and what was the process of treatment, and obviously how did you succeed in becoming cancer-free?
I discovered my lump at home, minding my business. And because I'm fortunate enough, I have to help your listeners understand that South Africa has 43 million people, 93%, more than 70% of those people are black. But we have only 7% of the entire population with medical insurance. The rest of the people have to rely on the public health system. So I'm one of the lucky people who fall into the 7%. And because of that, I was able to go avail of very good medical treatment, but it was very freaky. When I go out and teach my community, I always say, you have to educate formally the girl child, because I believe that if I didn't have formal education, I probably would be dead. Because I went in to the first doctor and she felt my lump and told me it was a very nice, friendly, mobile lump that I shouldn't worry about. And then I went for an ultrasound as well, and there were no areas of density, wara. Go home. The guy was so arrogant that he still patted me on the shoulder and said, have a good day. And I took the ultrasound results, went to a surgeon, breast surgeon, who looked at the results and said, no, this is good. But the moral of the story is I was persistent, and I kept saying, I am not going to take no for an answer. I don't believe that having a lump is a good thing. Let us exclude cancer. But quite frankly, I wasn't going to be saying the C word at that time. But I finally had a biopsy, a lumpectomy. And it was only when my lump was sent in for pathology that it came back malignant, and everybody went, whoopsie. The 3 doctors. I had the pleasure of going back for a second ultrasound with a guy that had told me to go have a nice day, who obviously didn't even remember who I was. Sure. And I had to remind him and say, I saw you last week, and you told me there's nothing to worry about.
So tell me, as far as competency issues are, you had access to health care like not a lot of people have, and yet the people that you went to were not able to give you a proper diagnosis or the answers that you needed. So, I would have to guess at some level in our own intuition we know if we're well or we're not well. How would you encourage our listeners to follow through like the way you did?
I have a saying that doctors are fantastic people, but doctors are not gods. And people have to empower themselves in terms of knowing their rights as medical consumers, especially women. We tend to listen to doctors and shy away from asking questions. If you buy something in the grocery store and it's faulty, and if you buy milk and the milk is sour, you go in and yell about it and get your milk back, a new fresh carton. But with our health, we tend to be very demure, not ask questions. And it's very interesting because it's just not a third world or uneducated or illiterate women phenomenon. I have doctor friends who would say, I didn't want to ask a question because I don't want to know. It's better not to know and whatever. But do you raise the issue of competency? I must say South Africa produces one of the world's best trained doctors. So these were fantastic, highly qualified, but it's just that level of arrogance that you don't fit into a box. You're under 45, you are under this. Do you have family history of cancer? You can't have a problem, go home, honey. Relax. So
we know you don't know. You have an extraordinary story. You've spoken a bit about your journey in analysis and getting better yourself. You're now carrying the torch, and you're passing that to other people. Can you walk us through sort of your process of being a girl in South Africa, and then moving on to traveling and college and starting your own foundation or starting your own nonprofit, and now here you're sitting in a room with all of these notable world figures and experts on the topic. How did you get from A to B?
I'm sitting here and it's unreal who I'm rubbing shoulders with. I have to keep pinching myself. But I was brought up by a single mother who was twice divorced. I'm one of 8. And my mother said to my sister and I, the only two girls, that she was going to give us a husband that would never leave us. And, oh, Mom, you're awesome. No, but her whole thing, the husband that would never leave me, is my education. And it is through the education, and that's why I believe that I am alive, because I can read, I can hold my own. But I went through ordinary schools, for black people at that time, because I'm of a certain age. So I grew up still under apartheid. So I didn't go to any fancy schools. But because my mother was such a fanatic in terms of academic excellence for girls, I mean, if you will, there was reverse discrimination in my house, because the boys could flunk and do whatever they wanted to do. Wow. But Mom knew that the world is much harsher on a girl child, especially within an African context. So I excelled in school.
I like your mom already.
Mom is cool. I came to the West, went to Wesleyan University in Connecticut.
Wow.
That
must have been quite different. I mean, talk about sort of a racial difference from where you came from to going to Wesleyan. What was that like?
You get to Wesleyan. In South Africa, every black child had to have a Christian name, which was, we will call you John or Mary, so that the white people are able to pronounce your name. Don't come tell us you're Mulebatsi. What the hell is that? So I get to Wesleyan in 1989, and I'm Anne. Anne with an E, very proper, very British. Okay. And then everybody's like, excuse me, are you not from Africa? Right. Where did you get that name, Anne? Just the way Americans can be. And it was quite a cultural shift, coming from a rural school and ending up at Wesleyan and having to compete with America's best. But just having teachers who and fellow students who were in awe that you made it this far. I mean, I wrote my first essay at Wesleyan, and one of my professors sent it back. I will not mention his name because he will be very embarrassed because I'm at CGI now. He sent it back and said, "Is this your draft? I think you submitted the wrong thing." And I'm going, "Hey, dude, that's my best, my best essay." But, just having then writing support and things like that and making it through Wesleyan and coming back home when South Africa was changing and getting a job in industries like mining and cement making and, non-traditional or male places, but being in my 20s and being the first black woman manager in that particular company was wild, was exciting.
And you had men working for you?
I had my...
And there were men working for you?
Yes, who had white men, we must be very specific, wow, who had a huge problem and for the longest time thought I was their secretary. And would keep saying, "Excuse me, are you going to make tea?" And I would have, "Thanks for being at Wesleyan and learning about feminism and all those things." I would say, "Thank you very much. If you're going to make tea, please make me some."
Turning the tables on them.
Absolutely. And it was frustrating. It was challenging, but a good learning curve. So I worked in those industries for about 8 years, and I went back to law school to reinvent myself. And, my combination of a liberal arts education and my legal background are very helpful in the work that I do now with the women, because not only am I bringing being a survivor and the emotions of being a survivor, but I'm bringing a whole legal nuance, because I believe that if a man denies a woman so-called permission to have a mastectomy, that is a violation of a woman's right to life as enshrined in our Constitution. That is a violation of her right to equality. That is a violation of her right to body autonomy. So I'm raising those issues, and people are saying, "Oh my God, we never thought of a denial of access to medical care as a form of violence against women. And I believe very strongly that it is. But also being brown and breastless, I'm able to walk into traditional societies and say, here I am, I'm alive, I'm a hot girl, I'm smart. My breastlessness does not define the essence of the woman that I am, and therefore it shouldn't. I mean, easier said and done, because I have the resources, I have had the exposure, I've had world-class education, so I'm able to challenge. But I'm very encouraged, because before I left, actually part of my my CGI commitment partners.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that. You come here, you got to get put on the hook for something, right?
Yeah. My CGI commitment partners are a bunch of males, black males in South Africa, who call themselves Sonke Gender Justice, but all they are about is challenging other men for abusing culture to oppress women. Because
for hiding behind cultural traditions to abuse women.
Yeah, not even hiding behind them, because people are, for a lack of a better word, bastardizing culture to oppress women. So these are men saying,
that's just the way we've always done it, and so I have the right to act this way or do this.
Not even this is how we've done it, but using it in a negative way. For instance, the dowry system was never meant as ownership of a woman's body. It was actually meant in the olden days as a form of social insurance for the woman, given to her family. In case she's divorced, he dies, he runs away with another woman, she can come back home. And he has paid something to help her parents raise the children and look after her. But now, with the introduction of money economy, people don't have cows anymore, so they pay the dowry in cash. So for somebody like me, it would be like, bring your whole stock portfolio. Because she's smart, she's Western educated. So the more educated the woman, the more expensive.
So you really are, you were right in saying when your mother said she was going to provide you with a husband, the education side of it truly has served you as 10 times more than that.
I mean, I will keep emphasizing the whole issue of me would not be alive if it weren't for my education. Because not only did I get cancer, but I developed chemotherapy-induced cardiomyopathy.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Congestive heart failure, where the heart muscle is pumping function is compromised because of the toxicity of the drug that I was on. But because there is that fantastic thing called Google, I could go in and Google my drugs and realize that there was potential for hydromycin to damage your heart and give you congestive heart failure. But like the first time around, when I said to my oncologist, are palpitations part of the side effects of chemotherapy? He said, no, you're young, no, it's not going to happen to you. And eventually,
you don't fit into that box.
Yeah, eventually, I did not fit into the box, and I finished chemo, and a week after chemo, then I had a completely damaged heart that I was indicated for a heart transplant. That's how bad things are. But teach the woman to read. Give her that husband. I mean, I was married, I'm divorced for 6 years, but I can still come to CGI and mix with the movers and shakers in the world.
So really, that's another element that's so important that seems to, it's addressed well, but I don't think it can be emphasized enough, which is access to information, access to the internet, to education for different things can really alleviate so many problems in so many areas. And you've illustrated a lot of points really in a very poetic and wonderful and personal way, and we really appreciate you spending the time with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
For more information on this podcast, please log on to www.miptalk.com. That's MIPTALK.com.